don't go up there and like teach. So that's the lecturer's job. So what we do is when they come in for their tutorials for 2 hours, so they have weekly tutorials. For other actuarial courses, it's every 2 weeks. However, they come in for 2 weeks, and then we just sit there, we work through problems. I first see them working through problems, and I want to see them like work through the problem, struggle through the problem, and then see any errors that they make. So there's 2 errors that students normally make. So the first one is like a whoopsie daisy error, which is like oh, I forgot to carry the 3, and then that's my answer's wrong. And then at that point, I'm just like, okay, it's just this that you need to. And then the second one is like a conceptual error, where the students sort of like missed something during lectures, like maybe they didn't understand the lecturer, etc., etc. So I like sit down with that student in particular and then explain like from the top that this is that and that is this, and then this is how you actually get to the answer. And then I watch them get to the answer themselves, and then I come back in like a system. So I don't actually give them the actual answer. And the role that we perform, it's sort of like a middleman between the students and the lecturers, because it's like, as a lecturer, it would be impossible to attend to every single student possible. So like we do that, and then also some students might be intimidated by lecturers, so we just go on and are more approachable. And so I think it's helped me like quite a bit, because it's helped me in like my own studies. So like, for example, for financial engineering or financial economics, I don't necessarily have to study it. Like, I could take the exam like today and get the exemption for it.
Must be nice.
Because because essentially I know it inside and out, and like I've explained it like in great detail, and I've even done more research outside of it. Like,
obviously you're doing your master's now in investment space, so like you have so much more sort of like context being actually taught.
Exactly. So it's helpful in that regard as well. And I think in terms of like communication, like how to communicate concepts to people who might not know them is a very important skill. And doing that in like a non-patronizing manner. Because like
the way you relate is so important.
Because students are like very, I don't want to say sensitive, but the way in which you say something can affect like
the way in which they understand.
Exactly.
Because if they have their backups, and they're not going to necessarily engage with it as well as they could.
So like there are like a couple of tutors that just go like, oh, why doesn't the student understand this? Like, this is so, and like to some people some people that are extremely intelligent, they don't get how it's possible that someone might not understand something, because they instantly get it and they easily get it, and they cannot fathom it. Like they just don't get it at all. Like I do have this like one friend who's just like back in maths, who was just like, how do people not get this? Like I don't get like how people don't get this. And it's just sort of difficult to like explain, like how someone might not get it. So it's like, for like to be a tutor, you have to be like understanding. You have to be like, okay, this is a really difficult topic, and it's normal that a student might not, get this. How can we move forward? How can I make them a little bit more enthusiastic about this? How can I sort of like go down to their level? So like even in like body language as well, it's like sort of it's also important. Like when a student asks a question like, and they're sitting down, like I don't like stand up and like tower over the student. Like I actually like crouch down like while they're seated.
Like
and we're on the same level in the body language terms, and then mentally we'll be on the same level. And then I try to like when I'm working through the questions with them, like I'll go on my calculator too, so it doesn't seem like I'm this super genius that instantly knows the answer. So it seems like they could possibly do it as well. So I think it has been a really good skill, and it has like taught me a lot on how to actually convey information to different, audiences.
I know one thing with me was lecturing. I don't know if you found the same thing with tutoring. It's like, it's also quite humbling because sometimes you get things wrong. And like students will point it out. Like I remember my first lecture that I did with intros, with the intros class. I was really nervous. It was like 200 of them. My first time lecturing that number of people. And I mixed up. So I put the compound and simple interest formulas on the board, but I mixed them up. I said the one was the one and the other one was the other one. So, and then one of the students was like, I think it's the other way around. And I remember looking at the board and being like, oh my word, he's right. And I remember I turned around, looked at the board, and I was like, okay, what are we going to do now? Like, how are we going to be humble and be like, thank you? Or are we going to like, try to brush it off? And I just turned around and I was like, I am human too. And I was like, you know what? And I think that is also a good learning experience. I think we have better cohesion now as a class because we're like, she's fallible. And I think it probably makes you more approachable when you make mistakes. Not that I'm encouraging mistakes. It's definitely makes you more approachable. Last sort of question I would want to ask you is, I saw that you did some back work recently. And to our audience, who I think will be considering actuarial science, also in the actuarial journey, what's the benefits of doing back work while you sort of are studying? And what was sort of like the key sort of learnings that you had from that experience? Also, how did you get that experience? Like, how does one go about even getting back work?
Right. So I joined the Actuaries in the Making program, which is made by Soshan. And I think at the beginning of the year, we went
to... Is it UJ?
Yes.
UJ. Earlier this year. Okay, wait. He hosted one of our team events.
Yes, exactly. So he hosted one of our team events, and I was like, wow, this is... he hosted a team event which essentially like taught teams how to communicate.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I was like, oh, like what else does this guy do? What other platforms does he create? And so on and so forth, because I learned a lot from that. And then I found that he had like an Actuaries in the Making, which is this virtual backward program. And then I signed up for that to try to learn like a little bit more from him. So they have virtual VAC work in December and in July. So you can just go on their LinkedIn, like Actuaries in the Making, and then there's a link there where you can actually apply for the actual VAC work. So it actually consisted of us it was a bunch of students, and we were split into different teams. And then we sort of like had a project that we each needed to work with. And then after 2 weeks, we would present that project to everyone. So we were working with our actual leader was this guy, Jason Gaskell, who works.
Oh, we know him well. Yeah.
So he sort of like gave us IHME data, which had to do with the deaths in China. And so China is going through a very interesting transitional phase right now in their mortality, whereby they are increasingly eating more junk food and relying more on junk food, which is leading.
So the lifestyle diseases.
Yes, exactly. So our job was to sort of like investigate that. So we sort of like at first like we tried to do the modeling like in Excel, and then I was like I could possibly like leverage some of the skills that I learned, and then so I was in charge of like the coding bit, like coding the model.
And what did you code in?
So I coded in Python.
Okay.
So at UCT we learn we do Python for like 6 months at first, and then we never touch it again, and then we just do R, like R language.
Add in Excel as well.
Yeah, add in
I mean, that's not language.
Yeah.
What would you call that?
So
A glorified calculator.
Yeah, essentially. So I self-taught myself Python for my master's thesis because I'm using
I was chatting about this.
Yeah. I used it in my master's thesis, so I was like, okay, let me learn Python, and then it's a much better tool in my own opinion than
R.
Than R. So essentially, I at first for the actual debt data, we were trying to just model like mortality and projected 10 years into the future for different types of deaths, so different causes of death. So let's say like stroke, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So at first I had created an ARIMA model, and then with my ARIMA model, I found that, we can't actually project 10 years because it's too like simplified.
Okay.
And then so I went into my stats notes and I was like, okay, so what has happened now? And then so our final solution was like, the final one was the Holt-Winters model, which was it actually takes into account more complex cyclical seasonal trends within the data, and it projects things really beautifully, really nicely.
It's just actually when you talk about things being projected beautifully.
Yeah. So that ended up being our, the actual final model, and then we sort of like made presented it like saying, if this continued, this will be the worst case scenario in terms of mortality. This will be the best case scenario. So our main aim was coming in from like a public health perspective. We were saying that in China, the diet in sodium is too high. There's an over-reliance on sodium. So China has the highest sodium intake for like 40 years now. And so worldwide, it has the highest sodium intake for the...
That's interesting because in the West, it's more sugar.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
So in China, it's just salt.
Sure.
It's, or like soy sauce, basically, one of those like foods. So we were like, this is, it's making the comorbidities a little bit worse, it's affecting the mortalities, that sort of thing. And we were saying that if there aren't certain policies put in place, the deaths could increase to, this so on and so forth level. And then so we came up with solutions. So the other team members came up with the solutions, like the actual regulations and restrictions.
Like where you tax foods that are saltier or whatever, so that you like disincentivize people from buying this food and then incentivize them to buy foods that are healthier.
Yeah. So
that's really what's also what I really like about that is how it connects sort of policy to what actuaries do, right? It's not like you just modeling like ta-da, like it actually has ramifications.
Yes.
And do you think that exposure through that back work was a really beneficial experience?
Yeah, it was really nice because I got to meet and chat with like a lot of actuaries and
good networking tool.
Yes, exactly. And learn more about what they do, and then other students as well, and students from other universities, like giving them advice as well, like giving my experience how things have been for me. So it was really nice.
And then also the soft skills of having to work in a team, right? Which is,
exactly.
In reality, I mean, given my corporate background, like that's what you do. You're always working in a team. It's really seldom that you have a project that's all yours.
Yes.
There's the ability to, model and communicate, etc., with other people.
Yes.
So it's a valuable skill.
Yeah.
Very last question. I know I said that was my last question, but very last question. What would be a piece of advice or number of pieces of advice that you would give to like aspiring actuarial students? Or, I mean, to reframe that, maybe something you wish you had known when you started this journey, just as a form of encouragement to end us off.
So something I wish I would have known is that it gets better. So
very important.
Yes. So like when you get like a bad result or something,
and
like
you will, trust me.
Yeah.
Like that's a guarantee.
100%. Like it might seem like the worst thing in the world right now, and it might seem like the world is crumbling down, but it's it's something that you'll sort of like laugh about and tell someone about like 5 years and
100%.
it won't be that big of a deal.
Exactly.
So,
although it's so difficult to see that at the time. I remember I failed my first actuarial science test